Hello and welcome to this special show, The Rise of Digital Currencies. The cryptocurrencies or the digital currencies are getting a lot of attention worldwide. India saw the Bitcoin premium surge by 300% to the global valuations as a reaction to demonetization that happened on November 8th. Let's welcome in then Vitalik Buterin, who is the co-creator and inventor of Ethereum. He's in India the first time ever for the Blockchain India Summit. Vitalik, hi, welcome to India, and I hope your stay and the trip has been eventful. So how did Ethereum happen, and how did you go upon it, and how is it different from Bitcoin, really?
So I first joined the kind of cryptocurrency space, or it was then just called the Bitcoin space, back in 2011. I found out about Bitcoin on the internet. I thought it was very interesting, and over time I kind of got more and more into it. I started reading about it, writing about it, building software for it. About 2 years later, while I was in university, I realized that I was already spending like 30 or 40 hours a week on it, and so I dropped out, went into the space full time. And I spent quite a bit of time looking at all of the various projects that people were trying to do in what was back then the Bitcoin space. Eventually came to realize that there were quite a lot of different kinds of blockchain applications that people were trying to make, and that potentially you could use blockchain technology for a lot of things other than just peer-to-peer money, the way that Bitcoin was using it. You could use blockchains for financial agreements, registering various kinds of property, land registry, digital identity management,
So would you say it's an improvisation on Bitcoin? It's a better, safer technology?
So the idea basically is, right, that you have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is peer-to-peer cash, and then you have the technology, the blockchain, and the blockchain is necessary for making a peer-to-peer cash system that works. Basically, the blockchain solves a problem that's called a double spending problem, which is that if you try to make a peer-to-peer currency out of just messages being passed to each other over the internet, then I might have 50 rupees. Then I could send you those 50 rupees, but then I could not delete them, and I could send the exact same 50 rupees to someone else. Right? So I could turn 50 rupees into 100 rupees, and rupees would hyperinflate faster than Zimbabwe. So the idea of a blockchain is this kind of common shared record that keeps track of which coins have already been spent, at least in the case of Bitcoin. And in the case of Bitcoin, basically, if your coins have already been spent, then it shows up in the blockchain, and you can't send the second transaction anymore. I
can also buy a fraction of this, or do I have to buy a full unit?
No, so like in the Bitcoin software, the kind of smallest unit that the Bitcoin software recognizes is called a Satoshi, and there's 100 million Satoshis in what we call a Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. So, what is the best way of getting into it? I mean, would you say that it's a program without any chance of a fraud, third-party interference, or is it about censorship? What is the best way to explain this? Right.
So, moving on from Bitcoin to Ethereum, first of all. So, you have blockchain technology, right, and it solves these important problems for Bitcoin. And what I realized was that there were all of these other applications that potentially could really benefit from the properties that a blockchain has. Right. So in terms of what properties a blockchain has and what they are, decentralization, fault tolerance, reliability, security, I mean, definitely like resistance to kind of censorship, fraud, and interference. Also, just the fact that the system is global. So like with Bitcoin, for example, I can send money from Kyrgyzstan to Guatemala, and it happens just as quickly as sending money to my neighbor. Right. So the idea basically is that, with Ethereum, can we try and take those same benefits and make those benefits possible to be applied, not just in money, but like theoretically in anything.
But Vitalik, what has been the acceptability around the world? Because we understand that US and China seem to have accepted it much faster, much better, Russia as well. The other countries, what's your feedback from there?
It depends. I mean, we often think about like the US and China because they're fairly large and high-profile countries, and lots of things happen inside of them. But if you look at, regions like Europe, Southeast Asia, South America, in a lot of places, you have pockets where there is really a lot of attention, a lot of excitement. Then you have other places where there's not that much happening. And even like in the U.S., it's the same thing. You have lots of activity in San Francisco, lots of activity in New York, but if you go and look at like Detroit, not that much.
Vitalik, how old are you?
22.
Yeah, and how long have you been working on this?
So I discovered Bitcoin for the first time back when I was 17, and then came up with the idea for Ethereum when I was 19, so 3 years ago.
But, also talk to us about the reaction that you have seen coming from the economists, regulators, and policymakers, because they have been going back and forth on this.
It's definitely mixed. I mean, especially over the last couple of years, I've actually been surprised to see that a lot of policymakers have actually been quite willing to accept blockchain technology. Now, with Bitcoin specifically, they tend to often be a bit more skeptical because the currency applications are the place where like some of the like black market activities that they don't like are concentrated. But once you explain to them some of the other possibilities, like digital identity systems, financial contracts, making like government records resistant to tampering, secure land registries, all this other stuff, they tends to get very excited. And some of these governments, not only are they not banning it, some of them are actively subsidizing it.
They are. Yeah. But what are the chances, since you are into it, you wrote it, and you are a co-founder, creator there, what are the chances of a misuse, or we've heard so many instances, read about it being hacked as well. So how safe is the technology? How would you put that?
It's definitely early stage. I mean, there's also different layers of the technology, right? So like in the case of Ethereum, you would have the Ethereum core. And the Ethereum core has been, I would say, hardened very substantially over the last 4 or 5 months because of the attacks that we've gotten. And we've ended up rewriting a lot of the core code several times, and like I'm much more confident in it now than I was half a year ago. If you go up the stack, then one of the challenges that you have is just making sure that the code that people write actually is correct. Right? So one of the kind of sales pitches of blockchains is that you can have code that runs exactly as written, and you can't interfere with the way that the code is written. Now, if the code is written in a way that actually reflects the intentions of the people participating in it, then that's a wonderful thing. But if the code has some error in it, and that error makes it suddenly very easy for some hacker to just like steal the funds, then that's a different story, right? And it's actually a very challenging problem, right? Bridging this kind of gap between intent, which is this kind of very fuzzy human thing where we don't even fully understand our own intents a lot of the time, and sort of really hard computer code that has to be like exactly formally specified. And there are mathematicians, computer scientists, and a lot of other people have been coming up with a lot of tools over the past 10 or 20 years to try to help bridge the gap.
But also, there's so many cryptocurrencies at this point in time, and we see some being added at one point or the other. Is there space enough around for all of them to coexist?
Realistically, there are over 1,000 cryptocurrencies, but over 900 of them, they're basically just fairly boring clones of, Bitcoin or Ethereum, or clones of other clones of Bitcoin. So they just take some existing cryptocurrency, change a few parameters, and call it an innovation, right? And like back in 2012, 2013, this was something that could potentially create a new cryptocurrency that was still pretty valuable. And if you look at something like Litecoin, which is like one of these just simple parameter changes, it's still got a $150 million market cap. But the systems that people are creating now, like if you look at what's come out over the last year, it's very clear that in order for something new to emerge in 2016, it actually has to have a very substantial amount of new technical innovation behind it.
Your point is very well taken, but on that note, we need to take a quick break. We are in conversation with Vitalik Buterin, and when we come back, we'll of course talk about on how India stands in this line of cryptocurrencies.